I listen to the scientists. A convention having tens of thousands of people in one arena is very different than having people walk into a polling booth with accurate spacing to 6 to 10 feet apart, one at a time, going in and have machines scrubbed down. But I do think there are going to be a lot more. I think you could hold the election as well, dealing with mail-in ballots and same-day registration. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done. That's for the Wisconsin courts and folks to decide. But I think it's possible to do both, to have both more mail-in ballots. People, and today is the last day, I guess, till 5 o'clock to ask for one. It was an hour time difference from where I am in Wisconsin. And I think it could be done based on what I've been hearing from the news and what I understand the governor and others are saying. But that's for them to decide. All
right. So seems like an encouraging message, but I mean, it's pretty irresponsible because there's no amount of social distancing that's really going to keep people safe in these polling locations, especially when you consider how many polling locations shut down because poll workers didn't want to show up and risk their lives. So all these people are jam-packed, they're crammed into the very few polling locations that remain open.
Okay, let me do a little bit of a crass political analysis here. So first off, there's things in there that I objected to that I'm going to explain. But for Biden now, the bar is so low that I was like, oh, those were coherent thoughts. And we went maybe over a minute there where he didn't stumble or lose his train of thought. And I'm like, well, maybe that's a win. So now onto the substance of it. He says, well, I mean, convention, we should probably do that one virtual. But in Wisconsin, well, you got to get out there and vote. It'll be fine. Social distancing, right? No, it won't be fine. And I'll be more bold in saying, you know what? If you're Biden and you're doing political calculation on the convention, maybe it's not such a bad thing that it's virtual. Because if you're hearing whispers about how they might replace you with Cuomo at the convention, man, much harder to replace you in a virtual convention than in a real convention. So if you were just doing a crass political calculation, you go, oh no, people in Wisconsin at the absolute peak of coronavirus should go vote for me, okay? Because I got to wrap this up and make sure Bernie's out of my way. But later, months later, I don't know about a convention. Maybe we should do it virtual, right? And maybe not invite Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, he could Zoom bomb maybe. Yeah, and by the way, all these politicians that are implying that like we're being crazy to tell people not to vote. How many of them have you seen pictured standing in a line waiting to vote? They're voting by mail.
Such a good point. Yes.
No, they're not doing it.
John, you took the words right out of my mouth. So what I was going to say is, if Biden thinks it's so safe, all right, let's see him in Wisconsin. If Biden's team is willing to have Biden go out, and he can wear 3 hazmat suits, I don't mind. Okay, but I don't want Biden to get hurt. Okay, wouldn't want this wished upon him. But that's why you shouldn't have the voters go out in Wisconsin, and you shouldn't encourage them to go out. But if any politician, Republican, Democrat, etc., think it's okay to vote, then I need to see you standing in line with everyone else. Just like symbolically, I know Biden doesn't live in Wisconsin, but the Republican legislators that made people vote in Wisconsin, they live in Wisconsin, and I want to see them without hazmat suits on in that line just like anybody else. But they're not going to do that. Voss was in a hazmat suit or equivalent of one, and he's the main Republican in the Assembly that forced this election on the people of Wisconsin. You got to live by your words, but none of them do because they're the elites. So, Anna, now you got Bernie, too. So let's see if he's on the same page or not.
That's why you're now calling for Wisconsin to join the other states and postpone its primary. Tell me why you think that's so important.
Well, it's not a new idea. I think over a dozen states have done that. And the answer, Andrea, is pretty obvious, is we don't want people to have to risk their lives in order to cast the vote. I think the proper process is, as quickly as possible, is for all states to allow people to vote by mail, get the word out, get the ballots out, and let people cast their votes without having to line up at a polling booth, have poll workers, often elderly people, signing up people. That's a dangerous situation, and if we can avoid that, avoid it.
So that interview was from a few days ago, and it was before the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, called an executive order to postpone the election. So at that point, the thought of postponing the election was still a reality. But I appreciate that that was what he was pushing for, right? Because that is the responsible thing to do. This isn't about, rigging it in a way that would benefit Bernie over Biden. It's about actually valuing human lives and ensuring that A, people don't risk their lives to vote, and B, people eventually get the ability to comfortably vote and exercise what they are entitled to do. And unfortunately, it didn't end up playing out that way because, the courts are stacked against the Democratic Party. So Tony Evers was overruled by the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, and then later the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah. So look, let's be fair. Let's do the same political calculation for Bernie as we did for Biden. So it should be noted, Bernie's trailing significantly in Wisconsin. And if you're trailing significantly, you might want to buy some time and have the election be later. So that's certainly possible. It's also the humane thing to do. So maybe he got lucky that his side is the one that's more humane. And so it allowed him to do the right thing. Okay. But also consider this. This is a well-known fact. You probably heard it before on the Young Turks. Under 45-year-olds vote 70% in favor of Bernie. In most states, that number holds. Above 45-year-olds vote 70% for Joe Biden. So if the affected groups, the far more affected groups, the ones that are at greatest risk are senior citizens. So it's possible that it drives Biden's numbers down and it is totally unfair to him. Now, obviously, Biden doesn't think that because he wants to push forward. And he's probably right. It didn't play out that way in Florida or any other states on March 17th. Biden won decisive victories anyway. But that was March 17th. And here we are, several weeks later, where people have got the memo. Back then, a lot of folks hadn't gotten the memo. Now folks a lot clearer on how dangerous coronavirus is and how contagious it is. So who knows? But you know what Biden has in his back pocket that Bernie doesn't? Because if Bernie pulls off a miraculous upset victory in Wisconsin, the press will just delegitimize it on behalf of Biden and say, oh, it's because of coronavirus, it doesn't count. If Biden wins, they'll say it's a spectacular success and it means everything in the world. So I guess if I had hundreds of millions of dollars of media propaganda at my disposal, I could afford to say whatever I want to.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.